by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly.
Wow.
In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Today, we're pleased and honored to have as our guest Dr. Duke Pesta. He's the academic director of the Freedom Project Academy, a live online school that is faithfully educating America. Freedom Project Academy is Common Core free, offering individual classes and complete curricula for students in kindergarten through high school. Unbelievable. Let's hear what Dr. Pesta has to say about transforming the way we educate our youths. Listen in and call in with your questions and comments, 646-652-4620, 646-652-4620. Remember to press the 1 button if you're listening by phone, but you want to break in and ask a question or make a comment. Press the number 1 button on your phone or your iPhone or whatever it is, and we'll know that you want to break in. And we do look forward to hearing from you. Dr. Pesta, thank you so much for being on our show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
Well, you know, of all the issues that we've discussed, and I guess I've been doing this now for umpteen years, school education, to me, is my biggest issue. I take more exception to what we are doing regarding education than anything else. And I take exception to everything, so you can imagine how far off I am. I'll be very upfront with you. I don't believe in public education. I do not believe in government involvement in education. I do not believe the government should have anything to do with it. I think this is a responsibility of the parents. How children are educated and how they learn is up to them with the guidance of their family. And we would be yards ahead of where we are today. And I'm so pleased to see someone has taken the reins and developed a program that's online that allows this to take place in the home. So I applaud you and thank you so much. Please tell us about the Freedom Project Academy.
Well, thank you. And we are 100% in agreement. The more the federal government, even the state governments are involved with education, even the local government, city government is involved with education, the more corrupt, the more expensive, the more ineffective, the more ideological it becomes. There is no constitutional basis for the state at any level messing with our kids' education. Founding fathers understood completely that education had to be parent-centered. It had to be free from any kind of government intrusion. And here we are now, a couple hundred years later, with a really corrupt, debased system. So I'm with you 100% on that. And what we're doing at Freedom Project is unique. There are a lot of programs out there for moms and dads to buy discs, pre-recorded discs, or to watch downloaded lessons. But we want to go further than that. We want to recreate the classroom experience with real, live, educated, qualified teachers teaching America's school kids over the computer like we're talking right now, bringing real education into the home. And with the technology being as good as it is now, we can actually have classrooms. We've got 15 kids in the elementary school classes, up to 25 kids in the upper division classes, the high school, middle school classes. So what the kids see is the teacher. They'll see me like you're seeing me. The teachers don't get to look into your living room. They don't get to see what your kids look like for all sorts of privacy and security reasons. But there's a list on the side of the video where every kid's name is listed, so the teachers can see who's in class and who's not. The kids can press a button on their computer to raise their hand electronically. Teachers can call on them. Kids wear headsets, much like I'm wearing now. So the kids who get to see the teachers can talk back and forth to them. They can talk to other kids in the class. So we really have created the classroom environment in your own living room free from all the bullying, free from all the politics, all the drugs, all the sexuality that these kids are finding on their public school campuses. And they don't just have classmates. They have classmates in all 50 states and 14 foreign countries. So our kids are becoming pen pals, forming relationships with kids all over the world, which helps them learn, helps them have that socialization that so many parents want for their kids without the dangers and the politics of the modern public school campus.
You know, it seems to be so incredibly archaic to have kids get up in the morning and get dressed, stand on a street corner, and usually you have to walk the kids if you live in a suburban area where there's very, very few people around in the streets early in the morning in the dark. Walk them to a bus, wait for the bus to pick them up. They drive to school, then you have to be concerned about them coming back. You know, and then when they're in school, they're all put in a box called a classroom, and they all have to sit there. And my big objection is the fact that you may have 30 children, and sometimes even more, in one classroom. You have one ill-equipped teacher to handle this. Not that they're ignorant or anything like that, but they're ill-equipped to handle 30 kids at one time. I couldn't handle 3 kids at one time. I had 3 sons. I found that a chore. Can you imagine 30 in a classroom? But you're having them sit there artificially, being quiet, not moving, and listening. Well, when you're young, you want to explore, you want to talk, you want to experiment, you want your mind to wander, you want to develop. That's the way you develop things. They say most kids who are smartest learn learn the process of problem solving in the backyard while sitting in the mud. I mean, that's where they learn. They figured out what was right, what was wrong, and they figured out for themselves, and there was no teacher pressure on them that artificially tried to make them who they wanted them to be. They were who they were. And this is my big objection. It's almost like we want to teach a bunch of robots, and there's no 2 kids that are alike. Although they may both be about the same age, one may be at the latter part of that age group. Some may be just coming into that age group. So they're almost a year apart, but mentality-wise or maturity-wise, they may be years apart, but yet they're in the same classroom. I'm sorry for my diatribe, but it just grabs me to heck. What do you say about that?
I think you're right. I think you can give kids a structured education in the home, not with the state, but you can ask kids to, they're going to need to sit still to do math problems. They're going to need to sit still to be able to discuss history. So, but the problem is not that we do a little of that. We don't need that for 8 hours a day. We don't need our kids in government schools 8 to 10 hours a day. That's where it becomes tedious. You can give a kid a real quality, what we would call classroom education, in 2 to 3 hours a day. You don't need more than that. And I think you're right. If you give the kids small, steady doses, but then let them go out and explore, let them run around, let them work off their energy, let them learn in other ways, right? In our program, for instance, elementary school kids who need the most immediate contact time, they go to school 2 hours a day for 4 days a week. Monday through Thursday, for 2 hours, the elementary school kids learn. Then they're off doing other things. The middle school and the high school kids, they get 2 hours of class every week, and that's it. 2 full hours in their subject area. So if you're taking a math class with us, you'll take a Tuesday, Thursday math class for an hour each day, and then that's it. Then you're on your own to do some homework and to experience math in other contexts. But it really frees up moms and dads, right, to let kids play, let kids exercise, but also educational things. Sit down and watch a movie that's got some redeeming value. Take them to a play. Take them to the zoo. The idea that you can educate kids experientially, like you just said, and balance that out with the kind of book learning that kids are going to have to do. I mean, kids are going to learn all sorts of problem-solving skills sitting in the mud, but they're not going to learn how to read. And they're not going to learn necessarily how to do algebra. So we need to balance it out. And if we put the parents in charge of that, with aids like Freedom Project, which will occupy far much less of their time, there's all sorts of opportunities for kids to grow on their own well. And so you strike a very meaningful balance.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. People say, well, if you don't get an education through our school system, you'll be a failure. Well, half of the multi-billionaires, I'm talking billion, not with a B, not an M, billionaires in this world, more than half apparently have never graduated college, never went to college. They went to high school, and many of those never completed high school because they found it too boring. Their minds were too filled with wonder, and they became very successful because they used their mind. And it seems that the school system regiments kids just to think the way we want them to think on certain subjects, and turns them off to really turns off their imagination, which makes people who they are.
Well, you're exactly right. And it's ironic to me and hypocritical that the failed public schools that are demonstrably failures, they have failed now for about 40, 50 years, even before we put the Department of Education in, which was a huge depth. That it went really downhill when we created the Department of Education. But these schools are failed. They have failed to educate our kids at the level of our great forebears. They have failed with every decade that goes by. They fail more in being able to bring our kids up to 21st century standards. They are failing our kids in the global economic market. They are failing our kids in basic literacy. They are failing our kids in the accurate version of American history. In fact, in very little are they successful. The idea, the irony that those failed public schools, this huge Byzantine, federalized, centralized public school model has the temerity to tell our kids that they'll fail if they don't sign up for that garbage. It'd be like sending your kids to a corporation to work, a corporation that's been bankrupt 6 or 7 times in the last 10 years, a corporation that only exists because we keep pumping money into it despite its failures, and having that company tell you, unless you work for us, you're not going to get ahead in this world. We would never accept this in any other walk of life. But this is what happens when federal bureaucrats control things. If they keep failing, we keep spending more money and threatening people who don't get involved in it. Just look at the healthcare system Obama burdened us with. It's exactly the same program. The bigger it fails, the more expensive it gets, the less freedom you have, the more they threaten you to get into the system, or they're going to fine you. This is exactly what we're doing in the public schools as well.
Yeah. Now, how do you get around the argument that, today, the woman of the house who was the woman of the house years ago now has to work. Now, I know that the dynamics of the economy have changed, and I know there's a certain amount of truth to that. But really, if they really put a pencil to it and really thought through the process, they would find out that they would probably be better off staying home with their kids, educating their children, minding the house, than going to work, because they're really not getting ahead that way anyway. But some people feel that they have to work, so if they work, how could their children stay home alone by themselves? Or are there little community, how does it work, in other words? How do you argue?
A couple of things. First of all, I agree with you. The two-parent working family is not an accident. That's by design. The need for two parents to work emanates from out of the 60s, when all the new social experimentation, all of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society bull garbage, all that was going on. And what happened to the African-American family is a microcosm of what now is happening to all families.
Right.
In the 1950s, the African-American family was one of the most stable. Fathers were in the home. Moms and dads didn't get divorced. There was a tremendous religious, spiritual family ethos. Along comes big government planning and the civil rights movement, which, as far as education in the family was concerned, was a disaster. What it did is it basically made fathers superfluous. It allowed moms, single moms, to claim control of the welfare state that way. It created great dependence and poverty of education. That's now happening, this mandatory two-family cycle where mom and dad both have to be working to make ends meet. And you said yourself, if they actually thought about it, when I encounter moms and dads, that's the argument I hear. We can't afford to homeschool. It's nonsense. At the same time they're telling me this, their kids are wearing Nike tennis shoes. At 10 years old, they've got cell phones. They're wearing designer clothes. They're in all these high upscale sports. Their kids are cheerleaders. They're in dance at high levels. They're spending thousands of dollars a year on extracurriculars. It's not true. The parents need to make a choice. Your job as a parent your first job as a parent, before anything else, other than the safety, the physical and health concerns of your children, the single most important thing you as a parent have on your plate is to educate your kids. If that means taking away the Nikes, if that means keeping them home and not letting them play piano lessons and all that other stuff, if that's what it comes down to, I mean, what benefit is it to us to have kids in nice clothes with lots of opportunities for sporting events, who have all sorts of diversions and leisure time, all sorts of electronic distractions? What good is it to the country if your kids can barely read, if they're not able to get career jobs that allow them to support themselves and their own families? It's misplaced priorities. You're right. It's not going to be easy with one person in the family working. It's not going to be easy, but it's a choice. You can make it work. If you're willing to sacrifice superficial luxuries, you can give your kids a really good education without having to ship them off to these public schools. To me, it's a choice thing. It's a responsibility thing. I'm less bothered about the financial aspect of this. I'm bothered by American moms and dads deciding that it's the 8 to 10 hours a day of babysitting. That's what I've had moms even tell me that. Well, we could theoretically swing it financially, but they don't want to be home with their kids at that time. They don't want to raise their kids that way. They want to go off and do things. They don't want to be in the home with their children. So these kids themselves, they're almost like a designer accessory. We've got our 3 kids. We don't want to raise them. We don't want to educate them, right? We like the fact that at 8 in the morning they're gone. They don't come back till 5 or 6 at night after their extracurricular activities, and we have to deal with them. They like that, and that until we change that mindset, we're not going to fix any of this.
Yeah. Well, I hope my daughter-in-law is not listening to this broadcast, but when she had her first child, she was working for an organization, a private organization funded by the state that oversaw the preschool children. What do they call that school? Daycare. That's right. My wife just showed up. She's helping me out. But daycare. And she when she got pregnant many years ago, and what she talked about mostly was where she was going to place the child. And I thought to myself, that's kind of unusual. You're having a baby, you're having a child, and the number one priority on your plate is where am I going to place that child after the child is born? I mean, to me, it's incongruous. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, she went to what she considered the best, and guess what? It wasn't the best, and she wound up taking her out. And but what bothers me, and then my youngest son, they're on their second kid now. They're going to have another child, and she works for the EPA, and she has a child, and bingo, off to daycare. After 3 months. And I just don't understand it. If you're going to do that, don't have children, If you're going to have children, stay home and do something. Have a family, build a family ties and whatever. Maybe I'm too old-fashioned and I should eradicate myself from society or something. But it just seems that everything we're doing makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And your example, the newest Nike shoes and everything, absolutely perfectly correct. It's exactly what I see. It's all what they have. It's not what they know.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it really is. They didn't do this to us. Big government didn't do this to us. We let them. We opened the door.
Right.
We could have stopped it. We can stop it now. There's nothing in this country stopping us from educating our own kids. There's nothing. Right now, we live in this wonderful place where, for the foreseeable future at least, you can pull your kids out of public schools. You can supplement if you keep them in public schools, you can spend an hour or two every night teaching them what they learned or showing them better alternatives to what they got in their public schools. You can do all that. You have to spend any money. I tell my public school moms all the time, all right, if you're going to leave your kids in public school, then spend 1 hour every night, 5 nights a week, showing them an alternative version of history. Okay, this is what you're hearing from the public schools. America's a racist country. We stole everything we have from the rest of the world. You're getting all this multicultural crap from your public school. Okay, let's look at the real story of Thomas Jefferson, right? Let's look at the real story of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Or give them math that's not Common Core math for an hour every week. You can do that, but we won't even do that. We've become so zombie-like in believing that it is the primary job of the federal government, complete and utter strangers, to educate our kids. John Taylor Gatto said, great educator, he said, that turning our kids over to public schools to be educated is to public strangers to educate our kids is madness.
Absolutely.
The late Sam Blumenfeld made the observation that public schools, putting our kids in public schools, is insanity. That the public school system in our country has become a criminal enterprise in the way they operate. But the complacency of this, right, in the family home, it's pretty staggering. That until we fix that, as I said a moment ago, we can't fix any of the other issues. Why wouldn't government assume the role of parents? Why wouldn't government start teaching our kids about sex the way they want it taught, taking religion out of classrooms like they want it gone? Why wouldn't the government start feeding our kids, start providing medical care for our kids, when our parents have basically said, do it, we don't want to be parents. All the things that parents are responsible for, you do it. Go ahead and raise our property taxes. Go ahead and limit our freedom. Take away our kids' faith. You just do what otherwise I, as a parent, should have done.
Yeah. You know, and what's interesting, there's so many famous people. Richard Dawson is one of them, who never graduated high school because he's dyslexic, and now he's the fourth richest man in the world or something like that. I mean, so there's really no direct correlation. Obviously, if you do well in school, that's better than if you do poorly in school, but there's no direct correlation between going to a public school and being successful. In fact, today there seems to be a indirect, a non-correlation, because I know of people today, young people, who graduate and they have master's degrees in business, master's degrees in other areas, and they're unemployed. But when you speak with them, they don't sound educated. They sound like they've just gone to school. Do we have a phone call? All right. What's the area code on that? 920. 920. We have a caller. Just hold on 1 second, please, Duke. Caller, area code 920. You're on the air. Your comments or questions, please. Hello? Hello? Oh, we had a bad call.
They dropped.
Oh, they dropped. Okay, something happened. Sorry about that. Maybe they'll call back. So there's no real direct correlation between going to school and learning something. And I think we've watered down the schools in the elementary schools with a Common Core, in colleges providing education, funding education, if you will, would pay back for the rest of your life. And it's cheapened the schools. We don't learn as well as we did before. But I think the whole system is a mess. And the answer, the government's answer to this is we need to appropriate more money to it. I say, oh, no, please, don't do that. Don't. You're killing me as it is. And I don't like the fact that I have no children now at home. They're all grown up. They have their own children. And yet I'm still paying school taxes. Whose idea was that, by the way?
Well, the way the liberals skew this is we are all investors in the future education of our children. Look, I could, in theory, even though it would bother me, it's completely unconstitutional, I could live in theory with the idea that we all pay a little bit for collective education if there was a shred of evidence that it actually worked, and it's failing now. And I make the argument, if you're going to tax me, right, disproportionately to pay for kids I don't have, then when the schools fail to graduate literate people, you owe me a refund. That's the way it should work. Look, can you imagine how quick they'd fix the schools if they had to pay us now back for every kid who can't read at a certain grade level, for every kid who graduates a math illiterate? I mean, if it was a retributive system, right? We pay for a certain service. When you fail to give it to us, you've got to pay us back what we paid in with interest, right? That would be something.
Oh, they'd be out of business in a week, Now, what particularly disturbs me is when there is a social uprising, if you will, in an inner city. Now, you and I from cities, I'm from Harlem, East Harlem. By the way, I sang doo-wop back in the 50s, but I won't sing to you now. And but when I see there's a problem in a neighborhood and everyone takes to the streets, I think, where are the parents? These are young people. I mean, how come they're not home? How come they're not studying? How come they're not working? And it seems like they in the streets in the daytime, in the nighttime. And I read a statistic by the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. They, I don't think, compiled the information, or they received the information from another organization, that only 51% of the children that go to high school in a major city. And Tulsa, being a small town, is considered a major city, by the way, for this the definition. Only 51% graduate. We have a 49% dropout rate. 49%. That's failure. I mean, if you went to school and you got 51% right on your test, you failed. And yet our school system gets 50%, only 50% right. I mean, graduate, and yet they consider themselves a success. We have a caller again.
Same number.
Okay, area code 920. You're on the air.
Hi there. I'm calling from the from Iowa State, and right now I have a minor in African American Studies, or as I like to call it, Negrology.
Hello.
Sounds like they lost the call again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we lost the call. I don't know.
I tell you, I could hear on my end. I think that was a plant call because she was using the N word left and right and giggling.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
I could hear that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize for that. There's no way for us to tell because we get calls from all over the United States, and there's no way to tell if they're.
Yeah, no, the person started off by saying that she had a minor in African American Studies, which she called N-blankology, and then stared tittering, and it was weird.
I didn't hear that. If I heard that, I would have killed.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think it was just a disruptive call. Yep.
Yeah. Now, how did you start getting involved in all of this? Was this a brainstorm one day? You woke up and said, "I can't take this anymore." I'm going to do something about this, or what? What happened?
We didn't mention that my primary job. I'm the academic director of this school, but my primary job, I'm a university professor.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
a professor of English at the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I've been a professor of English for 25 years, and I've noticed over the years that as the kids come to me, they're illiterate. I mean, you mentioned that only 50% of the kids pass high school, which means half don't. But the problem is the 50% who pass, many of them shouldn't have.
Right.
Because they can't read at a college level, they can't do math at a college level. So over the years, the kids are coming to me in college, and their ability to read, to think, to write is so remedial that there's only so much I can do for them. By the time they're 20 years old and they've got an 8th grade reading level, I can't even teach college level work to them. I have to dumb down university work to get them to be able to at least get through anything. So as this was beginning to happen more and more, I got involved with. It dawned on me that I was going to have to get involved with education at lower levels because by the time they're that old, you can't fix them. So I started getting involved with this School Freedom Project, and this was right at the time, 6 years ago, that Common Core was beginning to be implemented. And I saw right then that Common Core was going to dumb it down even further. It was going to make it more political, more centralized. The actual name Common in Common Core means exactly what it says. They want your kids to have a common education. They want your kids to come out the same kid. This is social justice engineering. I mean, rather than let kids who are good at math be good at math, kids who are good at English be good at English, we're going to lower the overall level of achievement so kids come out the same. It's outcome-based education. It's Marxist at its core, that we're going to hold back kids in certain areas because it's not fair that your kid can do math better than my kid, or my kid reads at a higher level than yours. That ain't fair. So let's level off education, make it one size fits all, cheapen it. That's what they've done here. And so I got involved with all of this because I got sick and tired of at the college level teaching college kids 8th grade reading skills. I figured if we got involved at an earlier level, we might be able to fix some of it.
Well, how did the high school so-called graduates get into college when they have reading skills at such a low level? I mean, aren't there any criteria anymore? There used to be heavy-duty criteria. I remember when I applied for Pace College back in New York. I mean, I was no brilliant kid, but I didn't have bad marks. I was put on a waiting list, I was conditional, and I had to wait for 6 months before they even called my name out. And boy, were my parents happy, And I went to a very good college, and it's now Pace University, excellent business school. And it did work out well for me, although I didn't want to go there. I wanted to be an automotive engineer, which my father wouldn't allow me to do because he thought I'd be a grease monkey, but that's another story. But how do you do that? I mean, how do you deal with that, and how do they get in the first place? How do they pass a test?
all the tests that you use to measure to get the ACTs, the SATs, they've all been watered down. As the curriculum is watered down at the public school level, the tests drop down to meet that as well. And another thing, one of the first things President Obama did was to federalize the student loan program. So the universities want butts in, they're greedy corporations, universities. They want butts in seats. And then there's the diversity initiative, right? You think about the mania for diversity on college campuses. That means, basically, we're going to let in much, much less qualified minority students because we want diverse campuses. So they're bringing in all these kids from ethnic backgrounds, from minority neighborhoods, who don't have the education they need to succeed in college. So they bring them in to remediate them in the name of fairness. That's one thing that's going on. Second thing that's going on, the traditional graduate from high school has been given a much less lower education threshold. The tests are reflecting that. And because we federalized the student loan program, you mentioned when you were going to school. Well, 20 years ago, if a kid wanted a student loan, he had to go to a bank.
Right.
And him and his dad had to explain to a bank how I'm going to major in a subject that's going to let me pay the money back.
Right.
And so you couldn't go to a bank 25 years ago and ask for $100,000 for 4 years to study women's studies or creative writing. They wouldn't give it to you. Well, the Obama administration said that that's discriminatory. You should get $100,000 to study meaningless subjects as much as if you're going to become an engineer or a doctor, because that's social justice. So the federal government started, and the federal government didn't care if they paid the money back. The federal government wanted people in college to indoctrinate them, right? So what happened? Kids who otherwise would either not have gone to college, not have gotten the money, or would have had to major in subjects that would have paid the banks back. Now that the feds are underwriting it all, everybody's going. And the universities aren't turning kids away because it's butts in seats. And it's even better for the universities because it's not some bank that has to be paid back. It's the feds. The feds turn the money right over to the universities. They take these kids they know will not succeed. And for 2 or 3 years, these kids limp along, getting further in debt before they finally fail out. And then they fail out of college after 2 years with $40,000 of debt, no degree, and then universities just keep rolling, right? Meanwhile, these ethnic and the minority kids we bring to campus, we can't fail them. It would look bad. We bring these kids to school, and then we take their money, take the government's money, and then we boot them out. So everything now becomes remedial. We're teaching freshman classes at a much lower level than we used to. I have a friend at Florida State University who called me at Freedom Project a couple months ago, right when the school year started, and he said, actually, longer ago than that, this was back in August, when the school year started, and he pointed out that at Florida State University, he was given 2 sections as a university professor of 7th grade math to teach kids. So incoming freshmen at Florida State were so remedial in math that he was teaching 7th grade math to kids to try to get them ready to take college level classes. And this is a university professor having to do that.
Well, if I know I'm not a football buff, a college football buff. I do watch a little bit of football. I know Florida State has an excellent football team. They did very well last year, I believe. And are you telling me if there was an all-star quarterback or running back or something like that, and they couldn't read, they would get in school?
Oh, I mean, it's even worse for the athletes. My goodness. I'm talking about for regular kids taking 7.
I know that I was being facetious.
I know, but the athletes, you know that. Like the athletes have their own tutors. They have literally almost one tutor for every kid. So these high-profile athletes, I mean, they're not learning much. I mean, if they're a kid who is academically struggling, they're going to give them all the support. They're going to give them all the hands up. They're going to have kids looking over their shoulders. They're going to have kids reading their papers before they turn them into the professors. There's all, and you know as well as I do that at most of these big universities, at some point that crosses a line from heavy-duty tutoring to professionals helping those kids, artificially propping them up so they can get through the school so they can play football.
Yeah, I never once heard of a star quarterback or running back or something like that, a position such as that, being taken off a football team because they did not pass a class.
You know, the only way that they pay a price, these athletes, is if they just don't go to class. Despite all the help, despite all the support, despite the fact that you have resources to help you, however illiterate you are, at least get through it. A lot of the kids just blow it off. A lot of the college players will just not go to class, at which point the professors have no choice but to fail them, right? That's when kids get in trouble. It's not the schoolwork that That's the problem. They will be dragged through by professional tutors if they just go to class, make an effort. It's staggering how many of them won't even make the effort, then find themselves suspended for a semester or suspended from a year because they're on academic probation because they couldn't even be bothered to show up.
Right. Yeah. Well, it really concerns me when, if you watch on television, when someone interviews young people in school, school-age kids, whether high school or college, they ask them a basic question. They can't even answer the question. They don't understand the question. And their sentence structure is such that it doesn't make any sense. It seems like as if they're totally uneducated in every respect, in linguistic skills, in critical thinking skills, in general knowledge of what is going on. And it's absolutely frightening. It's like they know the latest singer or whatever, or the latest fad and clothing and that type of stuff, the play stuff. But as far as anything about what is truly going on, totally ignorant. And I assume the government wants it that way because the government has to mold the minds in order to do its job of getting where it wants to go and taxes the masses to get it done. Am I just cynical or negative or what?
Not cynical at all. At the universities, the University of Washington made news last week, or Washington State University, because at the Writing Center, the place where kids go to get help with their writing, they have a list of their rules on the board, and one of the first rules is that grammar is racist. That we, as an English professor, I can tell you, we are de-emphasizing grammar, correctness, sentence structure, punctuation, capitalization. All those things now are considered racist. The idea that there is one correct way to speak on a college campus, that there is such a thing as proper English, they are now arguing that it's racist. You can't tell an illiterate Italian kid, an illiterate, because we're both Italians, right? Kid shows up with speaking nothing but Goomba Italian slang.
Right.
Now you have to respect that, right? That's his culture. To tell that Italian kid he has to learn how to speak the Queen's English, right? That's racist. Ebonics. Remember Ebonics in the 80s?
Right.
That's when this got started. The idea that if you come to class speaking jive and ghetto from your background, right? We can't correct you now. Who's to say proper white bread English is better than jive street talk on the street? So there are no rules. I mean, literally, these social justice, politically correct initiatives have destroyed proper speech, proper writing. To even to ask kids to write correctly now is to discriminate against them. So we don't care how they communicate. We don't really care if they master subjects. We don't really care if they become literate or articulate. We want, as long as they adopt our university politics, as long as they vote Democratic, become good little liberals, as long as they champion the welfare state, we're going to give them their degrees. College is much more now about social engineering kids to be progressives than it is about teaching them meaningful skills.
Yeah. Well, when I watch television, I usually have no patience with television. I stay on a channel for a station for a few minutes and I change it and then I get disgusted and turn it off. I don't know why I turn it on in the first place, unless I'm going to watch something like Shark Tank, which I enjoy watching, or Street Outlaws because I used to drag race, when I was young. But it seems that they cannot put a thought together or more than 3 or 4 words together that make any sense. And the schools, don't they say, hey, Bobby, when you apply for a job, if you speak that way, you're not going to get the job. You're not going to get hired. I mean, if you want to know why you're not hired, is because you cannot communicate. Most jobs require that you communicate appropriately, respectfully, correctly, etc. But to them, they think that you can go around and say, hey, me, man, tell some linguistic gymnastics or whatever they go through and get a job. It's not going to happen. I wouldn't hire anyone who couldn't speak well. I mean, I hire people, and the first thing when they in front of me, I want to make sure that they provide me the right and give the right impression, so that when they represent my company, I have an industrial health testing company, they look professional and knowledgeable about what they are doing, and they can communicate with the customer, because I can't be there. I'm not going to hire someone who can't speak, but now I'm racist. I mean, and I'm not talking about any race at all, but anyone who speaks goofy, if you will.
Yeah, you're right. And look, I mean, obviously there are kids who get through the college experience, and they do learn in spite of the politics. We'll get ahead, we'll learn. There's always going to be those kids. I'm talking about the bulk of kids at the bottom. So, from any graduating class from a university, you're going to have maybe half that class that can be articulate, can speak, does know how to read, and can fill the positions you're talking about. But just look at the service industry, right, where or the lower level entry jobs. Look at how companies have had to compromise. We're now seeing employees in these public sector jobs, these entry level jobs, with tattoos all over their faces, with piercings everywhere. Look at how entry level employers looking for entry level jobs have completely lowered the standard of what they're hiring, because there's nothing else out there. Things that we would never have seen. Think about in the 70s and the 60s. We would never have seen at McDonald's or at Burger King or at Walmart or at the grocery store. You'd never see kids with the spiked hair, the dyed hair, the tattoos, the piercings. Now that's all we've got at the bottom level. So you can see how businesses have kind of changed how they go about doing things, because they're so desperate for employees, period. There are so many jobs in this country that could be filled if we went back to stressing professionalism, cleanliness, like what you said, appearance, articulation, the ability to speak. It's amazing how many kids get through high school and how many kids get through college without the basic skills they need to be successful. Yeah. And so there'll always be those who get through, but what about the rest of them?
Yeah. Now, with your curriculum, you said that you had mentioned that they only study about a couple of hours a day for 2 days a week or something like that.
And it's not that they study 2 days a week. They do have homework, but they're actually in classroom time for the middle and high school kids, right? Yeah. And so think about it. If we've got middle and high school kids who are taking 4 or 5 classes, all right, each class meets 2 hours a week as opposed to 5 days a week, 5 hours a week. So it cuts it less than in half. And we absolutely believe that, as you said at the beginning of the program, that much of what our kids do has to come through their own curiosity. Give them the classroom instruction, but make it manageable. So in English class, high school English class, right, our kids will have 2 full hours of class time a week, but they'll have hours of classroom homework outside. So we encourage them to read. We have recommended readings. We have books that they have to do assignments on. So, but they're not in that classroom time where they're getting so much of this rotten garbage. And we free them up to strike a much better balance between being instructed by a professional and what we want to build that responsibility. We have deadlines, we have due dates. We have professional teachers. They expect kids to do the work when the work is due. So we're also trying to build respect. We're also trying to build the kinds of skills, showing up on time, right? Being able to, yes ma'am, no sir, right? Manners. We're trying to build those things as well, not just classroom skills. And I think it's a complete experience. We want exactly what you said you want to hire. We want to turn kids out at the high school level who can be appropriate, who know how to dress, to talk, to speak, who can be respectful and mannered. Because you can teach kids what they need to learn on the job for you, provided they have all that other stuff. They don't need to come to your company versed in what you do. If they are educated, articulate, respectful, you can, in short order, turn them into the kind of employees you want.
Yeah. Now, for those children whose parents have to work, is there an accommodation or place where maybe a large group of kids can assemble during the day to take these classes, not a regular classroom, but a place that's secure and maybe has a moderator to help the children if they have any questions, and then they have time for study time and other. Are there any other places other than the home, or this is either the home or no place?
Yes, one of the things we're moving to now is a situation where we, rather than trying to reach out solely to parents, the individual mom and dad who wants to enroll in our program, we're trying to form co-ops and partnerships. So think about this. We've got all these churches, excuse me, these big mega churches across the country, where Saturday and Sunday, They're hubs of activity, but nothing's going on between Monday and Friday. So
Right.
what if we use some of those rooms to have moms and dads drop their kids off at the church, have the youth pastor or a couple volunteer moms watch the kids as they sit in front of a big screen TV and learn their lessons, right? So we're going that direction. We're trying to get more private schools, more churches to become schools, right? Or co-ops where moms and dads will alternate, right? Okay, there's 7 kids in this local community, right? And this week they're going to be in Mrs. Smith's basement watching this, and Mrs. Smith's going to watch them. The next week, Mrs. Jones is going to take the responsibility. So each parent only once every 7 weeks has to oversee the kids. There are 1,000 ways we can do this.
Right.
We just need to get moving on this and get parents interested.
Yeah. Isn't it a shame that I have to pay a school tax? You know, my property tax pays the schools, and I have no children in school. I have to subsidize through the government, you know, school vouchers and whatever, and also pay for the bad debts of the college students that never wind up paying their debts. In other words, I pay for education all my life for even children that are not mine, and I'm paying it in spades. I'm triplicating my payment to them with all these government programs that don't work. And the end result is that we have dumber kids. And we have kids that, I shouldn't say dumb kids, I say misguided kids as the end result.
Miseducated kids.
Yeah, miseducated, right.
Our kids aren't stupid; they're terribly miseducated, and
Right.
I agree with you. I would love to see if we're gonna continue this public school program, and it's not going away anytime soon. You know, Donald Trump promised us that he would get rid of the Department of Education, get rid of Common Core. Who does he appoint to run the Department of Education? A longtime Common Core advocate who is not going to get rid of this who believes that the federal government has a right to oversee education. So, you know, I mean, nothing's going to change.
Right.
But I would love to see a situation where, like I said, that instead of paying taxes to the federal government to educate our kids, we kept that money and spent it ourselves on education. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. And I like that idea too. I said at the beginning, if they're going to tax us for education, when education doesn't work, they owe us a refund. They need to be reimbursing us for what they failed to do.
Right. Now, right now, if you send your children or homeschool your children, you don't get a tax rebate of any kind because you're not sending them to the public schools.
Nope. And you still got to pay your property taxes for school kids. That's right.
For the school kids. So you get hit double there. So that's not fair ball game. Now, how do you compare the results that you have to the results of the average, whatever the averages are for high school today? Is there a way for you to compare one to the other?
I can tell you that before we accept any kids, we give they're free, 100% free placement exams. As a matter of fact, kids who don't want to come to Freedom Project, moms who have no plans ever to send their kids to us, they can log on to our website and take our placement exams for free. So fourth, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, a placement exam in basic reading and math for every grade level. And what happens invariably is when moms and dads come to us from the public schools, their kids, they find out that their kids are on average 1 to 2 years behind where they should be for their grade level. And so we give a genuine fourth grade exam to fourth grade kids. The public school kids come to us, and these kids are doing math and reading at a second grade level. So really quickly it shows. So, you know, as you're listening, I would say to moms and dads out there, you know, measure your kids versus what we do. Log on, and if you think the public school education is so wonderful, you got your kid in a private Christian school, and you think the education is first rate, okay, why not for absolute free, take the test and see. 9 times out of 10, we almost never get kids who are reading and doing math at a higher level than our grade levels. It's almost always lower.
How many children right now are in your program?
700.
700. Okay, and how long has this program been in effect?
6 years. Well, 5.5 years ago, we started with 22 kids, and we've gone up every year. We now have kids, like I mentioned, in all 50 states, and the enrollment period for Freedom Project for the fall 2017-2018 school year is going on right now. From right now through early July, you can sign up for our classes. After that, they'll be closed. By the time we get to mid-July, we won't have any room. So The enrollment process is ongoing right now, and everything looks like already, early in the process, that we're going to get way beyond that 700 number. So it keeps going up every year. And again, 50 states now and multiple foreign countries. We've got children of U.S. servicemen in places like Germany taking our classes. We've got moms and dads, missionary moms and dads in South American countries and Asian countries who are having their kids in our program because they want to give them an American education. This is flexible. It is inexpensive. We're growing by leaps and bounds. And I'll say this to your families, too. Again, even if you have no interest in ever coming with us, but you think you might want to homeschool your kids, not only can you take our free placement exams, but our entire curriculum, all the books we teach at every level, all the literature we have your kids read, it's available at our website, fpeusa.org, fpeusa.org. So if you want to homeschool your kid, just steal everything we do and do it in your home. Do something to get your kid out of these public schools.
Right. Well, how much does it cost on average for one student to go to your school?
For one student to take 10 classes a year, 5 full semester classes for each semester, a full load is about $2,000.
Okay.
All right. So we're talking really, really cheap. And that $200, you think about that comes out to a very small amount of money every day. This is not your typical private school where you're paying $6,000, $7,000 to educate your kids. We're talking, if it's 10 classes, we're talking basically $200 for a full year of instruction in every class.
Oh, that's for the 2,000s for the full year.
Full year.
I was thinking 6 months. Okay, for the full year. Okay.
That's 2 semesters from August all the way through June. It's a typical school year. So you're paying basically $200, and if you take the full spate of classes with us, it comes to about little under $2,000 a year. And we are, I must also say, we are full at the high school level. We are fully accredited school. We give absolute college diplomas that are recognized by every college and university in this country. So this is a legitimate it's a real accredited, legitimate education with real professional teachers.
What classes do go up to at this point?
From kindergarten all the way through senior year of high school.
To senior year of high school. How well, what's your the acceptance rate from high school to college? Do most go to college, do go to trade schools, or they just go to work? Do you have any statistics on that?
It's all over the map. We know this, that with an FPA diploma and good grades, our kids have gotten into all the colleges they're applying to. We've got kids at Hillsdale College now. We had a kid just this last semester graduate who has got a full ride to Baylor University in Texas. They're getting it all over the place. Some kids start out at the community college level. Others are interning. They've taken a few years off. But if you're getting good grades in our school with our diploma, your kids are getting into most of the colleges to which they apply always.
Yeah. And how many organizations are there similar to yours in the United States doing about the same thing that you're doing?
Well, we're unique. In fact, we're the only school I know of that actually has live teachers teaching live in real time. A lot of programs out there where you could, Potter's School, for instance, is one that's been around a lot longer than we have, but they don't have the live teaching. They don't have a lot of what they do is discs and recordings. We have real teachers. And the other thing, our teachers, they make all the assignments, they grade all the exams for you. So, and they set the curriculum. So we are unique in that I have never encountered another school like us. Yep. You can buy programs, you can buy recorded discs and lectures that you can pop in your computer for your kid at home. But the one-to-one, face-to-face time, the live teaching, the real-time education is really unique to us.
Yeah, that's interesting. For some reason, that didn't sink in when you said that originally. And you're right, it's live teachers. It's just not a DVD talking back to you. Right. Now, do you offer financing for those people who just don't have the $2,000 outright to pay out?
Yeah, we have tuition assistance programs. We have significant monies we raise. I think this year alone, we're going to have over $30,000 that we can begin to assess and give money to students, needy students. There have been students in the past who have gotten full rides. It's primarily need-based, not necessarily excellence-based. Right. But for that reason, we consider ourselves a ministry. I mean, our job is to try to fix the education problem in this country. And if we were charging $15,000 a year for the education, we'd be pricing out the most vulnerable kids. So we try to keep it as absolutely low as possible.
Yeah. What about if there's a poverty-level child? How do you handle that?
Absolutely. We will assess the situation. We'll consult with the parents. That's what this big pool of money is for. Kids who can't afford to come otherwise. We have another situation where we've got some moms and dads that have 8, 9 kids, which becomes really expensive. Those, for families with 8 or 9 kids that want to get all of them in our school, we will work with them. We will use that donated tuition money. We have fundraising drives. We have scholarship drives. We have donors who want to donate for those very reasons, and we will spend every penny of that on families that need the money, that need the help financially to be able to put their kids in.
Yeah, well, that's remarkable. I've the school system, as you can tell in the passion in my voice, although it's far behind me and for my kids far behind them, just my grandchildren, I see them go through it now, and I don't discuss schooling with my daughter-in-laws or anything like that, because they're more part of the system, and I get everyone upset if I speak as you and I are speaking now, but so I keep my mouth shut. I'll be honest with you, I don't say anything.
The vast majority of American moms and dads don't want to hear it. Because if they understand how bad it is and they suspect it is, then they're going to have to make changes. They do not want to change their lifestyle. They both like working, they both like buying toys and vacations, and they just don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I on occasion I get I go to the dog. We have a big dog park here where you have your dogs run around with other dogs, and there's a small dog park and a big dog park and whatever. And there seems to be a lot of teachers there, and I usually wind up getting in a conversation with the teachers, and I try to find out what is going on in the education system, and it's amazing how protective they are, and almost how secretive they are. And I try to get a dialogue with them going, and I make it clear to them. I said, teachers are some of the most dedicated people in the world. They're the most concerned people that I've ever met. They love their jobs. They do well by their students. I go on and I praise the teacher. I mean, beyond words. And I said, but I really have a problem with the system, the school system, and I'll maybe bring up something that the school system is doing now that I don't understand. They can't talk about it, and that's really bothersome. They can't. And you know how every single conversation ends, no matter what I say. And I never say the teachers are dummy. They don't know what they. None of that. In fact, that's the exact opposite. They usually can't. I can't have a conversation with them, and they end every conversation with basically the same words. They say, "Yes, but I'm a good teacher." And I think to myself, I know that. I mean, I will say that too. I say, okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. And the conversation ends. It's like the teachers no longer have the capability to critically think. They memorize and regurgitate, and when something comes at them from a slightly different angle, they can't handle it. And that really bothers me.
There are also a lot of pressure from the schools. Like with Common Core, I know for a fact that teachers are told, you will not speak out. If you want to keep your job, you will not speak out about it. You will accept it. So right now, a lot of the teachers understand and are terrified. You better be on board. These schools, they're on lockdown. You will not, because the parents are so angry. You handle it with gentleness and flattery to try to find out what's going on. A lot of people are just angry. And so they are under strict instructions from their schools and from their superintendents. Do not criticize what we're doing. Do not share what goes on in your classrooms, or you'll lose your job. And so there's a lot of fear, a lot of intimidation, and like I said, there's also a lot of ignorance. You're right. There are good teachers out there, and there are horrible ones. And because of the unions and everything else, the bad ones can't be treated differently from the good ones. You can't fire the bad ones. The ones that are ignorant and inefficient, you have no control over them. And so it's just a mess. The whole system is a mess.
Well, I'm going to give you my last comment, and I'm going to turn it over to you to close the program out. These movies about the zombie nation and the Walking Dead and whatever, that's all a metaphor, and it all starts with our school system. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Pesta, for being on our show today. It's been very informative. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I applaud you for it. I wish you all the luck in the world. I'd like to give you the last 30 seconds to close the program out.
Great to be with you today. I think we really highlighted universal problems in the American public schools. And if you want one potential alternative that may or may not work for you, come visit us, Freedom Project Academy, FPEUSA.org. We have lots of information for free there, and we can certainly answer your questions if you give us a call.
Very good. Thank you so much for being with us, and I do hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date and give us an update of what is going on.
Anytime you want me back, happy to come back.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. Okay, folks, this is the end of today's program. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.